Amidst the shadows of time and the echoes of ancient lore and cosmic mysteries lies the enigmatic legacy of Hermes Trismegistus, the wise and articulate guardian of hidden knowledge. The secret of Hermes Trismegistus revealed embarks on a sonic voyage to unveil the barriers separating tangible reality from the vast expanse of the unknown. Under the twilight sky, as stars whisper their secrets and dance in a cosmic symphony, we embark on a quest to unravel the enigmas guarded by Hermes himself. Recorded words echo ancient incantations and revelations, guiding you through hidden passages of time and space. The narrative, steeped in mystique, beckons listeners to transcend the confines of ordinary reality and explore the esoteric realms cherished by Hermes Trismegistus in his teachings. Close your eyes and let the enchanting voice of the narrator transport you to a realm where alchemy, astrology, and philosophy intertwine in an eternal ballet. Will you dare to decode the secret guarded by Hermes for millennia? Join this auditory odyssey and unearth the lost wisdom awaiting in the folds of time, eager to be unveiled. The nous or mind emanates from the very being of God, as much as one can conceive of God's being, whatever form it may take. There is no single nous that comprehends itself entirely. Hence, the nous is not separate from God's being. It radiates from this source akin to light from the sun. The nous of humans is inherently good, hence why some humans are deemed godlike, as their nature closely mirrors the divine. Thus, the benevolent demon has dubbed gods as immortal men and men as mortal gods. In beings devoid of reason, the nous is synonymous with nature. Where there is a soul, there is a nous, just as where there is life, there is a soul. Nonetheless, in beings devoid of reason, the soul is merely life without nous. The nous acts as a benefactor to human souls, guiding and shaping them towards goodness. In beings devoid of reason, the nous operates in accordance with nature, whereas in human souls, it acts in opposition, given that suffering and desire plague us. Indeed, suffering and desire engulf the body like wildfire, causing the soul to sink and become submerged. Yet, if the nous can assume control of the soul, it illuminates it, countering its natural tendencies, much like a skilled physician cauterizes or removes diseased parts of the body, alleviating the soul's suffering by extracting lust, the root cause of its malaise. The profound ailment afflicting the soul stems from its rejection of God, birthing erroneous thoughts and fostering malevolence without yielding any goodness. Thus, in combating this malady, the nous reinstates virtue within the soul, akin to a healer restoring health to the body. Human souls, akin to irrational animals, lack the guidance of the nous. The nous, in turn, acquiesces to their desires, granting them free rein, thus keeping them devoid of reason. The irrational sway of passions and desires engenders immeasurable evils, and God has subjected these souls to the unyielding strictures of the law to awaken them to their depravity. Does this not contradict what you have previously told me about destiny? If a person is predestined to commit adultery, sacrilege, or any other transgression, they will face retribution. Hence, when one acts under the compelling compulsion of destiny, all occurrences, my son, are the machinations of destiny, and nothing concerning material affairs, neither virtuous nor malevolent, transpires beyond its grasp. Moreover, through destiny, those who pursue beauty and goodness reap the repercussions. Consequently, each individual acts and gains understanding in accordance with their deeds. Let us set aside discussions of sin and destiny. Let us instead delve into the nous, its capabilities, and its differential operation in humans and irrational beings, whose salutary effects lie dormant, quelling the passions and desires of humanity. Among the latter, a distinction must be drawn between those possessing the nous and those unconnected to it. All humans are subject to destiny, to the cycle of birth and change, which constitutes its genesis and culmination. They endure the dictates of their destiny, yet those guided by reason and the nous do not endure it in the same manner. Having renounced evil, they do not perceive it as such. What then, Father, do you mean to say? Is adultery not evil, nor murder, nor any other wrongdoing? My son, one who adheres to reason will suffer the anguish of adultery and death akin to the adulterer and murderer, even if they have not committed such acts. Escaping change. Birth is impossible, yet one who possesses the nous can liberate themselves from evil. Thus, my son, I have always upheld the doctrine of goodness. Had it not been inscribed, I would have rendered an invaluable service to humanity, for he alone, my son, delving into all things as the sole begotten Son of God, has uttered truly divine words. Hence I once heard him proclaim that all created entities are one, especially the incarnate beings endowed with intelligence. We draw sustenance from a latent force, an active force, and the essence of eternity. Therefore the nous is benevolent, much like the soul emanating from it. Hence, spiritual entities remain undivided, and the nous, being God's soul and reigning supreme over all, can enact its desires. Reflect upon this and link it to your earlier query regarding destiny and the nous. By relinquishing futile disputes, my son, you shall grasp that the nous, God's soul, indeed governs all, including destiny, the law, and all else, with nothing beyond its purview. It can divert the human soul from destiny just as readily as it can subjugate it to its will should it shirk its duties. These profound words were uttered by the virtuous Tad. They are divine, truthful, and enlightening words, Father. Yet, please delve deeper into what you have imparted. You mentioned that the nous of beings devoid of reason operates in alignment with their nature and instincts. I posit that the instinct of beings devoid of reason is passion. If the nous acts in accordance with instincts, and those are passions, does not the nous itself become a passion, as it is affected by pathos? Hermes, indeed, my son, your inquiry is pertinent, and it is fitting that I provide an answer. All immaterial aspects within the body are intimately linked to suffering. They embody passion itself. Anything that initiates motion is immaterial, and all that moves pertains to the body. The immaterial moves autonomously through the nous, and this motion is passion. Thus, both are susceptible to suffering. The former instigates motion, while the latter succumbs to the impulse of movement. When the nous disengages from the body, it also liberates itself from suffering. Perhaps it would be more precise to assert, my son, that nothing eludes suffering, that everything is subject to it. The term suffering does not solely denote endured pain. The former concept is active, while the latter is passive. Bodies also exhibit their own activity. They are either static or in motion, and in both scenarios suffering ensues. The immaterial, inherently driven to action, thus falls prey to suffering. However, do not be misled by these words. Active force and suffering are synonymous, yet nothing prevents employing the most precise and fitting terminology. Tad, Father, your elucidation is remarkably clear. Hermes, then contemplate, my son, that God has bestowed upon humanity a unique double gift among mortal beings, the nous and speech, tantamount to immortality. If man utilizes these two gifts judiciously, he shall differ in no way from the immortal beings. Moreover, he shall transcend the confines of the body, and through these endowments ascend to the ranks of the divine and the blessed. Tad, are there no other creatures that employ speech, Father? Hermes, they possess merely sound, voice, utterance. Language markedly diverges from voice, for while all humans share speech, each living being possesses its distinct voice or sound. Tad, but does not human language vary from individual to individual, Father? Hermes, indeed, languages exhibit diversity, my son, yet humanity remains unified, speech remains singular. And when translated across languages, it retains its essence, whether in Egypt or Greece. Comprehend, my son, that you have yet to grasp the profound significance of the word. The blessed God, the benevolent demon, has proclaimed that the soul resides within the body, the nous within the soul, speech within the nous, and that God is the Father of all. Thus, speech mirrors the image and nous of God, the body reflects the image of the idea, and the idea embodies the image of the soul. Consequently, the most refined aspect of matter is air. The most vital of air is the soul, the subtlest of the soul is the nous, and the most crucial aspect of the nous is God. God encompasses and permeates everything. The nous envelops the soul envelops the air, and the air envelops matter. Destiny, providence, and nature serve as instruments of cosmic order and the arrangement of matter. Every entity imbued with spirit constitutes a principle, and the fundamental principle of all things remains identical. Nonetheless, each constituent body within the cosmos possesses a manifold nature. Composite bodies invariably retain their essence as they transition from one form to another. Additionally, composite bodies possess their unique numerical identity. Without this numerical identity, construction, assembly, or dissociation would be impossible. Units combine to form the number that renders these bodies multifaceted, and when the number disintegrates, it reabsorbs the constituent parts, while matter remains simple and singular. This entire cosmos, this magnificent deity, in the likeness and image of the Supreme, which is unified with him and upholds the order and will of the Father, constitutes the embodiment of life. Nothing within it, neither in its entirety nor in any of its constituent parts, lacks vitality, and this persists throughout the cyclical journey ordained by the Father in the cosmos. There has never been, there is not, and there cannot be such a thing as death. For the Father desires the cosmos to be alive for as long as it maintains its cohesion. Hence, he is inherently divine. How could it be conceivable, my son, that within God, who is the epitome of the universe, who embodies the fullness of life, there exists the concept of death, because death signifies disintegration, and disintegration implies annihilation? How could we entertain the notion that a portion of the incorruptible could decay, or that a fragment of God could be obliterated? Father, living beings do not perish within him. They are an integral part of him. Do not misconstrue, my son, for living beings do not perish, but their composite bodies disintegrate. This disintegration is not death, but rather the cessation of cohesion. In truth, this disintegration does not signify destruction, but rather the prospect of a new future, of renewal. For what constitutes the dynamic force of life? It is movement, and what exists on earth devoid of movement? Nothing, my son. Yet, does he not regard the earth as motionless, Father? No, my son, it is teeming with movement while simultaneously enduring. It would be absurd to assume that the nurturing mother of the cosmos, which births and nurtures all things, lacks motion. For without movement all action ceases. It is folly to inquire, as you do, whether a quarter of the world is active. A body devoid of movement is simply inert. Understand, my son, that the entirety of the world, every single aspect, is in perpetual motion, whether in the act of creation or diminishment. That which is in motion is alive, and the sacred law dictates that nothing which lives remains unchanged, stagnant. When viewed as a whole, the world appears motionless, yet all its elements undergo transformation without perishing or being annihilated. It is language, the naming of things, that plunges humanity into confusion and anxiety. For life is not merely birth but consciousness, and change is not death but rather forgetfulness. In this light, all things are immortal. Matter, life, breath, soul, spirit, intelligence, instinct, all that comprises every living entity. In this sense, every living entity is immortal, but none more so than those receptive to God and capable of uniting with him. For they are the sole beings with whom divinity engages. They foretell the future through various means, dreams by night, signs by day, the flight of birds, the entrails, the air, the oak. Thus, humanity gains insight into the past, present, and future. Note, my son, that each living entity dwells exclusively in its designated realm. The denizens of the water inhabit the depths, those of the earth tread solid ground, and the winged creatures soar through the air. However, humanity interacts with all, engaging with them and gaining awareness and understanding with each encounter. God envelops and permeates everything, for he is the active and passive force of the universe itself. Hence, understanding him is not a daunting task. Should you seek to approach God through contemplation, ponder the order and beauty of the world, reflect on the necessity inherent in all that you perceive, and acknowledge the providence that governs the past and present. Observe how matter teems with life, and witness the unfailing divine movement that manifests in all that is beautiful and good, be it gods, demons, or men. But, Father Hermes, are they not merely the manifestations of a force? If they are but manifestations of a force, my son, who then sets this force in motion? What divine entity do you discern as the sky, the earth, the water, and the air are integral parts of the world? Thus, life and immortality, blood, destiny, providence, nature, soul, and spirit are facets of God, and the eternal continuity of all these is deemed good. Therefore, there exists nothing, neither in the present nor in the past, where God's presence is absent. Is God present within matter, Father Hermes? If matter were to exist apart from God, my son, where would you place it until it were set in motion? Would it be anything other than a chaotic mass? And who will initiate this motion? For as we have asserted, active forces are creations of God, from whom all living beings derive life, and to whom the immortals owe their immortality. It is He who precipitates the transformation of all that undergoes change, whether it be matter, body, or the very essence of things. Understand that these are the manifestations of God's force. The force's effect on matter yields materiality, its effect on bodies yields form and corporeality, and its effect on the principle determines essence. All of this is God, the universe. There exists nothing in the universe that is not God. Therefore, notions of size, place, property, form, or time fail to encapsulate God, for He encompasses the universe, and as such, He is everything and encompasses everything. Reverence this concept, my son, and venerate Him. There exists but one religion, one means of serving and honoring God, and that is to refrain from evil deeds. In our clandestine discourse upon the mountain concerning rebirth and the vow of silence, you, Tad, inquired about the divine nature in a cryptic and enigmatic manner. You did not explicitly expound upon it, instead remarking that none can attain salvation without being born anew. However, following your descent from the mountain, upon my entreaty regarding the teaching of rebirth, an aspect I remain unversed in, you pledged to impart this knowledge once I had severed ties with the world. Now that I have fulfilled this condition and fortified myself internally against the world's illusions, it is incumbent upon you to fulfill your promise, elucidating what remains obscure, whether through discourse or via esoteric means. But Trismegistus, I am at a loss as to the origin of true human birth. According to the silent cogitation of wisdom and the seed which is the ultimate good, my son. Who sows this seed, Father? For it is utterly beyond my comprehension. It is the will of God, my son. And what will be the nature of the one to be reborn, Father, as he shall bear no semblance to my earthly form or cerebral faculties? He shall be reborn as a distinct entity, a God, a progeny of God, all-encompassing and endowed with boundless powers. You speak in cryptic terms, Father, unlike a parent addressing his child. These matters cannot be explicitly taught, my son, but should it be God's will, He shall remind you of them. Your words, Father, transcend my comprehension and trouble me deeply. Hence my only rightful response is this: I feel estranged, a son distanced from his father's lineage. Forsake not your kin, Father, for I am your legitimate offspring. Illuminate for me in detail the process of rebirth, Hermes. What should I tell you, my son? Only this: when I perceived within me an indefinite vision aroused by the mercy of God, I went out of myself to merge into an immortal body. Thus, I am no longer the one I was before, but I have been shaped by the spirit, the soul. This cannot be taught or perceived with the material element that allows man to see here below. That is why the composed form that was mine before no longer interests me. I have no color, no sense, no measure, for all this is now foreign to me. You see me with your eyes, my son, but what I am, you cannot understand. Look and see with the eyes of the body. Indeed, with those eyes you do not see, my son. You have left me very confused and perplexed, Father, for now I cannot even see myself, Hermes. May God make you come out of yourself too, like those who dream in sleep. But in your case without sleeping, Tad. Tell me again, who causes rebirth, Hermes? The Son of God, the unique man according to the will of God, Tad. Father, you truly leave me speechless, for now I understand nothing. Indeed, I still see you with the same bodily form, with the same external appearance, Hermes. There also you are mistaken, for the mortal form changes from day to day. As unreal as the transformation may be, it changes over time, increasing and decreasing, Tad. But what is true and real, Trismegistus? Hermes, that which has no blemish, my son, that which is limitless in color, immutable, naked, formless, brilliant, alone capable of probing itself, the unalterable good, the incorporeal, Tad. It is beyond my understanding, Father. I thought you had made me wise, but all these notions block my understanding, Hermes. So be it, my son, with what rises like fire, or descends like earth, or flows like water, or breathes through the universe like air. But how can you perceive through the senses that which is neither solid nor fluid, that which cannot be picked up or grasped, and which is only conceivable through its power and active force, which is possible only for one who has a deep vision of the birth of God, Tad? I am not capable of doing that, Father Hermes. I do not mean that, my son, but enter into yourself and it will come. Desire it and it will come. Silence the sensory activities of the body, and the birth of this divine will occur. Purify me, Hermes, for this very ignorance is the first punishment, my son. The second is pain, and for suffering, the third is lack of moderation. The fourth is greed, the fifth is injustice, the sixth is avarice, the seventh is falsehood, the eighth is envy, the ninth is cunning, the 10th is anger, the 11th is thoughtlessness, and the 12th is malice. There are 12 of these punishments, after which there are many others that, in the prison of the body, compel man, by reason of his nature, to undergo the activity of the senses. However, when God has mercy on someone, these punishments diminish, although not completely, and this explains the nature and significance of the Renaissance. Now keep silent, my son. Listen with respect and gratitude. God's mercy will soon become our portion. Rejoice, my son. Now God's forces are fully purifying you for connection with the elements of speech. The knowledge of God comes to us through it and repels ignorance. The genesis of joy also comes to us through it, and suffering. The force that I mention after joy is humility. O wonderful force, let us receive it with joy, my son. See how it wards off lack of moderation. In fourth place, I mention self-control, the force that opposes greed, and this step, my son, is the support of honesty. For see how it quickly repels injustice, and we become just. Now that injustice has vanished, the sixth force I invoke is the one that fights against avarice, that is, kindness that extends to others. And when falsehood disappears, I recall truth, for then jealousies depart from us, and goodness accompanied by life and light follows truth, and no punishment of darkness affects us any more, for indeed they are repelled, they flee swiftly. Now, my son, you know how the Renaissance occurs. The arrival of the 10 aspects accomplishes spiritual birth and dispels the 12 aspects. Thus, we become divine through this birth, Tad. Now that, according to divine dispositions, I have attained these things, they are not made visible to me by ordinary vision, but by the power of received forces. I am in heaven, on earth, in water, in air. I am in animals and plants before, during, and after the prenatal stage. Yes, everywhere. But tell me again, how do the 10 forces ward off the punishments of darkness, which are 12 in number? How does this occur, Trismegistus? Hermes, this tent we have left is constituted by the circle of the zodiac, which in turn comprises 12 elements. It is a nature, but multiform according to the representation that man's deceptive thought makes of it. Among these punishments, my son, there are some that manifest together. Thus, haste and thoughtlessness are inseparable from anger and cannot even be distinguished. Therefore, it is understandable and logical that they disappear together when expelled by the 10 forces, for it is these 10 forces, my son, that give birth to the soul. Life and light are thus united, and from the spiritual arises the number of unity. Now, according to reason, unity contains the decad, and the decad unity, Tad. Father, I see in the spiritual soul the entire universe and myself, Hermes. This is the Renaissance, my son. It is not possible to make a three-dimensional representation of it. You know and feel it now. For the discourse on rebirth, what is written is only for your benefit. For you to share it not with the crowd, but only with those whom God has chosen, Tad. Tell me, Father, does this new body composed of the 10 forces ever disintegrate, Hermes? Silence. Do not speak of impossible things, for thus you would sin and disturb the eye of the spiritual soul. The physical body endowed with senses is very distant from the fundamental divine birth. The first disintegrates, the second is incorruptible, the first is mortal, and the second immortal. Do you not know that you have become a god, a son of the one like me, Tad? Father, I would like to hear the hymn of praise that, as you told me, you heard sung to the powers when you arrived. Add what eighth means, which is the phase of reintegration with God, the absolute being, Hermes. According to what Panda revealed in the Ogdoad, I agree with your haste to overturn this tent, for now you are pure Panda. The Spirit has revealed to me only what I have written, knowing well that I am capable of understanding all things, hearing and seeing all that I desire, and it has commanded me to do all that is good. Therefore, the forces within me sing in everything, Tad. Father, I would also like to hear and know all this, Hermes. Then be silent, my son, and listen to this very appropriate hymn of praise, the hymn of rebirth. It was not my intention to make it known thus without more, except to you who have reached the end of this initiation. This hymn of praise cannot be taught. It remains hidden in silence. Therefore, place yourself in a place of open sky, direct your gaze towards the south wind after sunset, and there worship. Do the same at dawn, but turn towards the east. And now, silence, my son, the secret chant of praise, the sacred formula that all the praise of the cosmos hears. This hymn of praise, open, O earth, let the waters of heaven open their springs to hear my voice. Trees, be still, for I will sing and praise the Lord of creation, the One. Skies, winds, be calm, so that the immortal cycle of God receives my word, for I will sing the praises of the one who created the entire universe, who gave the earth its place and suspended the firmament, who commanded the fresh water to come forth from the ocean and spread over the inhabited and uninhabited earth in service of existence and for the survival of humanity, who commanded fire to shine for all the use of gods and men. Let us gather to sing the praises of the one who is exalted above all heavens, the creator of all nature. He is the oil of the Spirit. To him be praise and worship from all forces. O forces within me, sing the praise of the one and the all. Sing according to my will. O forces within me, Genesis or holy knowledge of God, enlightened by you, you have given me to sing in the light of knowledge and to rejoice in the joy of the spiritual soul. O all you forces, sing with me this hymn of praise, and you, O humility, and you, justice within me, sing for me what is right. O love of the whole within me, sing within me the whole. O praise of truth, O goodness, blessed be the good of you. O life and light, here is the hymn of praise returning to you. I thank you, Father, for revealing to me the powers. I thank you, Father, for setting into motion all that is potential. Your word sings for me, your praise through me, the whole as the word, as the offering of the word. Listen to what the forces within me proclaim, celebrating the whole, fulfilling your will. Your will emanates from you, and all returns to you. Receive from all the offering of the word, save the whole that is within us. Illuminate us, O luminous God of life, for the spiritual soul is the guardian of your word. O bearer of the Spirit, from my urgency, you are God. The man who belongs to you proclaims it through fire, through air, through earth, through water, through spirit, through your creatures. I have received from you this hymn of praise from eternity, as I have found, according to your will, the rest that I sought. I have seen how, by your will, this hymn of praise must be expressed, Father, and now I also express it in the world that is mine, Hermes. Say, son, in the essential world, that is, the divine world, Tad. Yes, in the essential world, Father, I have this power through your hymn of praise and the expression of your gratitude, the illumination of my spiritual soul, has become perfect. Now, I also want to give thanks to God from the depths of my being, Hermes. Do not be imprudent in this, my son. Listen to what I say to you in the spiritual soul. To you, O first craftsman of rebirth, to you, my God, I offer the word. O God, your Father, your Lord, your Spirit, accept from me the offering that you desire from me. For the whole process of rebirth is accomplished according to your will, Hermes, my son. Thus, you offer to God, the Father of all things, an offering that is pleasing to him. But add this, more by the word tad. I thank you, Father, for the guidance you have given me, Hermes. I rejoice, my son, that you have obtained the good fruits of truth, an immortal harvest indeed. Promise me now that you have learned this from me, that you will keep silence about this wonderful power, that you will not tell anyone how rebirth is accomplished, so that we may not be counted among those who profane the teaching. It is enough that we both have done our part, me by speaking, you by listening in the light of the Spirit. Now you know yourself and our Father, O Trismegistus, Asclepius, from thinking to righteousness, Hermes, as my son Tad. During your absence, I desired to receive some enlightenment on the nature of the universe. I could not defer his instruction, for he is my son, a young pupil newly arrived to the knowledge of things. I was obliged to elaborate in detail to make the teaching more accessible. But for you I have chosen the main chapters of what has been said and have composed them in a more mystical manner, taking into account your age and the knowledge of the nature of things that you have acquired. If all things that come into existence or have already existed, it is not by themselves, but by another. And if all things that come into existence are different and dissimilar and owe their birth to another, there certainly is a creator who is their creator. This creator was not born himself. It is said that he was before all that was created, for everything that is created is born from another, as I have said. Thus, nothing can be before everything comes into existence, except that very one who is never born. The Creator is also the most powerful and is the only one. Only he is truly wise in all things. Indeed, nothing existed before him, for he is the first both in numerical order, in the difference between him and all creatures, and in the continuity of his creation. Moreover, all creatures are visible. Only he is invisible, precisely because he creates to become visible. Thus, he creates continually, and in this way, he makes himself visible. We must think thus, and start from this thought to marvel, and consider ourselves blessed to have learned to know the Father. For what is more wonderful than a true Father? Who is today, and how can we know him? Is it correct to simply call him God? Or should we also call him Creator, Father, or perhaps all three? Creator by his activity, Father by his goodness. For he is powerful due to the diversity of manifested things, and active, for indeed, everything comes into existence through him. It is necessary to make the distinction between what is created and the Creator, without ambiguity or endless wordplay, for there is no intermediary or third party between them. Do not allow any doubt to arise on this subject, whether for things above or below, for divine things, or for what is changing or belongs to hidden things. All that exists is summed up in these two entities, the created and the Creator, and nothing can separate them. For the Creator does not exist without creation, and one is what the word indicates, nothing more. Thus, one cannot be separated from the other, just as the Creator cannot be separated from himself. The Creator is simply the simple and pure uncompounded function, and must necessarily be identical to himself. Indeed, the creation of the Creator is the birth of a state of being, and what is begotten cannot exist as if it had extended itself. Thus, a creation must necessarily be begotten by another. Without the Creator, nothing manifests and nothing exists if the Creator and the creature are separated, each losing its own private identity, for deprived of its complement. Thus, we recognize that reality is summed up in these two entities, the Creator and the creation, forming an indivisible unity. Do not fear that the distinction I have made diminishes the respect due to God or his glory, for there is only one glory for him, that of giving life to all beings, of creating, of giving form and life. This is indeed the body of God. Never believe that the Creator has ordained anything bad or ugly, for evil and ugliness are indissolubly linked to generation, like rust to iron and impurity to the body. It was not the blacksmith who created the rust, it was not the parents who caused the desecration of the body, and it was not God who created evil. It is the usage, the wear and tear of created things, which produces the side effect of evil, and it is precisely for purifying creation that God established change. If any painter can represent the sky and the gods, the earth and the sea, humans and animals, and inanimate things, then God would not be capable of creating all of this. Let those who have such ideas experience the strangest things, for while they claim to praise and respect God, they refuse to acknowledge Him as the Creator of all things. Thus they testify not only to not knowing Him, but also to committing the most horrible blasphemy by attributing pride and powerlessness to Him. For if God were not the Creator of all beings, indeed, it would be as if He disdained giving life or were incapable of doing so. To think thus is truly impious, for God has only one attribute, goodness, and universal goodness is neither proud nor powerless. Yes, this is how God is, the good, the Almighty, who creates the universality of things. The entirety of creation comes from God, from the one who is absolute good and has the power to generate everything. If now you want to know how God creates and how creation comes into existence, here is a just and beautiful parable. Think of the farmer who sows seeds in his field, wheat here, barley there, and elsewhere different seeds. See how he plants life here, an apple tree there, and other types of trees in other places. Similarly, he sows immortality in the sky, change on the earth, life and movement in the universe. Thus, these aspects of his activity are limited in small number and easy to count, in total 4, plus God Himself and creation. And these 6 together constitute the universality of what exists. From Hermes to Ammon, from the soul Hermes, the soul is a being that has no body, and even if it is in the body, it loses nothing of its own essence. For by virtue of its own being, it is in perpetual motion, moves by itself through the activities of thought. It does not move into something, nor in relation to something, nor for something. Before the forces become active, it is, and what comes before has no need for what comes after. In something, it applies to place, to time, to the natural movement of growth. In relation to something, it refers to harmony, to the particular aspect, to form. For something, it refers to the body. For place, time, and the natural movement of growth exist for the needs of the body. An original link unites these notions, for it is true to say that the body needs a place, and it is that no body can form without a place, without space that is subject to natural changes. For no change is possible outside of time and without natural movement. And finally, no body can form without harmony. Space and place exist therefore for the needs of the body, for the changes of the body take place in space, which prevents the destruction of the changing being by change. The body thus passes from one state to another, depriving itself of the previous state of being without ceasing to be a composed body. When it transforms into something else, it possesses its state of being. Thus, the body always remains a body, but the state without which it is not enduring. Therefore, the body merely changes state, and space and place are therefore incorporeal, as is time and natural movement. Each has its own nature. The proper nature of place is the power to contain within itself. The proper nature of time is to annul or add. The proper nature of nature is movement. The proper nature of harmony is sympathy. And the proper nature of the body is change. The proper nature of the soul is to penetrate into its true being through thought. What moves is the driving force of the universe, for the nature of the universe gives it 2 movements, one by reason of its own power, the other by its power of creation. The first penetrates into the world and maintains its internal cohesion. The second causes its expansion while containing it externally. These 2 movements always occur together in everything. The nature of the universe brings about the existence of all things and gives them the power to grow. On one hand, by causing them to sow their own seeds, on the other, by providing them with moving matter. This movement enters into matter which transforms into fire and water, fire being full of power and force, water being passive. The fire, hostile to water, separates from it, and thus the earth was formed, floating in water. The continuous drying of the water around the earth released the vapor of the three elements, water, earth, and fire, and thus air appeared. These elements combine according to the law of harmony, the hot with the cold, the dry with the wet. From this union of all the elements was born a breath of life and a seed corresponding to the breath of life that enveloped it. When it descends into the matrix, it does not remain inactive in the seed. It transforms it, causing it to grow and develop. During this expansion, everything happens as if the seed brought an external form and shaped it accordingly. This form in turn serves as a vehicle for the inner form. Thus, each thing receives its own appearance. As the breath of life had not received any vital impetus in the maternal womb, but simply a natural growth impulse, it also harmoniously gave a vital impetus so that the indivisible and immutable thinking life, which never loses its immutability, could be welcomed therein. Thus, according to Numbers, what is in the maternal womb becomes reality through the process of birth and brings forth outwardly what was to be born. The closest soul connects to it, not according to its own nature, but according to the decrees of fate. Indeed, by nature, the soul does not wish to remain in the body, only out of obedience to fate. The soul imparts to the newborn the movement of thought and the mental substance of inner life. For the soul penetrates into the breath of life and stirs within it, awakening life. The soul is an incorporeal being. If it had a body, it could not sustain itself, for every body requires existence, needs the life it has as the foundation of order. Everything that is born is also subject to changes, for everything that is born has a certain extent and grows. When something is born, it grows. But all growth again passes through a diminution, a decrease, and then comes dissolution, disintegration. That which is born lives, and to have a share in the vital form is bound to the existence of the soul. But the cause of existence, for other reasons, exists in advance. By existence, I mean being endowed with reason and having a share in thinking life. It is the soul that confers thinking life. That which is born is called living by reason, by the power of thought, mortal by the body. Therefore the soul has no body, because it retains its strength without failing. But how can we speak of a living being if there is no animating principle? Much less could we speak of a reasonable being without the existence of a thinking nature that confers thinking life. As the body is composed, thought does not reach harmony in all men. For if the composite body has an excess of heat, man becomes airy and excited. And if there is an excess of cold, he becomes heavy and sluggish. It is nature that ordains the composition of the body in the name of harmony. There are three types of harmony according to heat, according to cold, and according to temperance. Nature ordains according to the star that dominates in the constellation of stars, and the soul, endowed with a body by decree of fate, accepts it and confers life upon this work of nature. Nature thus places the harmony of the body in accord with the position of the stars, combining the separate elements according to the harmony of the stars, so that there may be concordance among all. For such is the purpose of the harmony of the stars, to accord everything to the ordinances of fate. Thus the soul is a perfect being in itself that has originally chosen a life according to fate and drawn a consistent form in vital force and bubbling desire. The vital force serves the soul as material. When this vital force has generated a state of being in accordance with the soul's thought image, it is full of energy and does not succumb to apathy. Desire also presents itself as material. When it has generated a state of being in accordance with the soul's ideas, it becomes moderate and does not yield to the thirst for pleasure. For the rational power of the soul fills the dissatisfaction of desire. Thus, when the vital force and desire collaborate and have formed a balanced state of being and are constantly oriented towards the soul's reason, they create a correct inner disposition. For the perfectly balanced state of being they create restrains the excess of vital force and, on the other hand, satisfies the dissatisfaction of desire, guiding the being on the path of perfection. So it is the power of thought that, belonging to itself in its circumspection, has power over its own reason. The being of the soul governs and directs like a sovereign, like a guide. The reason that inhabits it directs like an advisor. The circumspection of the soul is thus the knowledge of thoughts that confers upon what is devoid of reason and understanding, a hint of reasonable power, minimal and insignificant in comparison to that power, but still reasonable in relation to the unreasonable, like the echo compared to the voice or the glow of the moon compared to the sun. A certain quantity of reasonable thought thus creates harmony between the vital force and desire, which mutually maintain each other in balance and attract to themselves a stream of reasonable thought, like an endless circular movement. Every soul is immortal and is always in motion. We have already said indeed that movements arise from forces or bodies. We further say that the soul emanates from an essence other than matter, for it is incorporeal. Just as what it proceeds from arrives, everything that comes into existence necessarily arises from something else. All beings that are born, and are then subject to destruction, necessarily possess two movements, namely, the movement of the soul that animates them, and the movement of the body that causes them to grow, decrease, and then dissolve through disintegration. Thus is described the movement of mortal bodies. Now the soul is always in motion. It itself exists by continuous movement and imparts movement to other things. Seen in this way, every soul is immortal, for it is the activity of its own nature that keeps it in motion. There are divine souls, human souls, and souls without reason. The divine soul is the active force of its divine body. It moves within this body and thus generates movement within it. When the soul is liberated from mortal beings, as well as from that which did not respond to reason, it enters the divine body. Within it, in ceaseless movement, it is carried along by the universe. The human soul also has something divine about it, but it is also bound up with rational aspects, desire, and vital force. Certainly these aspects are immortal insofar as they are active forces, but they are forces of the mortal body, and are thus very distant from the divine part of the soul that resides in the divine body. The soul of beings devoid of reason consists solely of vital force and desire. They are said to be unreasonable because they lack the rational aspect of the soul. Finally, consider the soul of inanimate things that, though they are outside bodies, animate them. This soul could move exclusively within the divine body and thus set these things in motion, so to speak, second-hand. The soul is thus an eternal being endowed with intelligence that thinks its own reason, and when united with a body, it attracts to itself the mode of thought of harmony. However, once freed from the physical body, the autonomous and free soul belongs to the divine world. The soul governs its own reason and imparts to what comes to life a movement in accordance with its thoughts, a movement called life. For it is the privilege of the soul to transmit to others something of its own being. Therefore, there are two types of life and two types of movement. One is the movement of the being of the soul, the other is that of the body of nature. The soul is autonomous, the other is imposed. Indeed, everything that moves is subject to the constraint of what generates the movement. But the movement that moves within the soul is indissolubly linked to the love that leads to divine reality. The soul is indeed incorporeal, for it is not part of the physical body. For if the soul had a body, it would have neither reason nor thought, for the entire body is devoid of thought. On the other hand, the thinking being owes its breath to the fact that it participates in the being of the soul. Breath or spirit belongs to the body, reason to the being of the soul. Reason considers all that is beautiful as objects of contemplation. The spirit, which observes with the senses, perceives phenomena. This spirit spreads throughout all the organs of perception, which constitute its different parts, including a spirit of sight, a spirit of hearing, a spirit of taste, and a spirit of touch. When this spirit of life, this breath of the body, transforms into a sort of sensory intelligence, it perceives sensorially. Otherwise, it simply presents things, for it belongs to the body and is receptive to all. Reason, on the other hand, belongs to the innermost essence of the soul and judges with intelligence and understanding. Reason possesses knowledge of divine things by right. The spirit of life creates representations, that is, apparent images. The spirit of life draws its life force from the surrounding world. The soul draws its life force from within. Thus, the being of the soul, reason, thoughts and understanding, or the power of understanding, the power of representation, and sensory perception contribute to comprehension, which is the power of understanding. Reason, which is the prerogative of the soul, creates thoughts that merge into understanding. These four elements, interconnected, constitute a single form, the form of the soul. The power of understanding or the power of the soul is contributed to by the power of representation and sensory perception. However, these are not constant and function more or less or diverge from each other. They weaken to the extent that they move away from understanding. But when they follow and obey through the sciences to the higher reason, we are in a state of choice. It is within our power to choose what is best and also what is bad. Despite ourselves, for choice related to the soul is part of the nature of the body. That is why destiny dominates one who makes such a choice. Since the higher reason, the thinking being that we carry within us, is autonomous and always remains identical to itself, destiny has no control over it. However, when the thinking being deviates from the Logos, whose thought penetrates everything, and which is the first after the first God, then it depends on the entire plan that nature has established for creation. When the soul thus connects to creation, it also depends on destiny, although it does not partake of the nature of created things. Hermes affirms the truth. Hermes, it is not possible for a man, an imperfect creature composed of imperfect members, and whose envelope is formed of many heterogeneous elements, to dare to speak of truth. But what is possible and right to say, and what I say, is that truth resides solely in eternal bodies, all of whose elements are true. Fire, which once and for all is fire and nothing else. Earth, which once and for all is earth and nothing else. Air, which once and for all is air and nothing else. Water, which once and for all is water and nothing else. In contrast, our bodies are composed of all these elements. They contain fire, earth, water, and air, but they are neither fire, nor earth, nor water, nor air, nor anything real. Therefore, if our bodily constitution has not received the truth from the beginning, how can it see the truth expressed, and it will understand it only if God wills it? Therefore, all things that belong to the earth are not the truth, but imitations of the truth. And not even all, only some, the rest are lies. When appearance receives the gift from above, it is an imitation of the truth. Without the power from above, it remains a lie, a non-truth. The same goes for a painting that represents a body. It is not the body that corresponds to the form of the subject seen. We see eyes, but they have no gaze, ears, but they hear nothing. All the elements shown in the painting are only appearances intended to deceive the observer's perception, who believes to see the truth, when in fact they see only a lie. When we see something that is not a lie, we see the truth, for we see or understand these things as they truly are. We see and understand true things if they are true. Truth is not on earth. Father Hermes, you are mistaken, my son. Without a doubt there is no truth on earth, nor can it manifest within it. However, some men to whom God gives the power to see, contemplate the truth. There is nothing real on earth, Hermes, I think, and I say that everything is appearance, illusion. These are the true things that I think and say. It should not be called truth to think and say true things. Hermes, how is this possible? One must think and say what is. Nothing is true on earth, Hermes, I think, and say that everything is appearance, illusion. This is what I think and say. Nothing can be called truth. Hermes, how is this possible? One must think and say what is. Nothing is true on earth. Everything is appearance, illusion. To the extent that everything is a constantly evolving phenomenon, an appearance that constantly metamorphoses, how can these things be true when they are not intrinsically so? Everything that changes is a lie because it does not belong in essence to itself, passing from one form to another. Man, however, is composed of many elements and does not remain as he is, but changes and transforms from one era to another, from one form to another. While in his shell, in a very short time, many parents no longer recognize their children, nor do children recognize their parents. Can a being that changes so much that it is no longer recognizable be true? Would it not be rather false, since in the course of its changes it goes through so many different appearances? Understand that only what is permanent and eternal can be true. Man is not eternal, so he is not true either. Man is an apparent form and as such quite false. But, Father, are not the eternal bodies that change also not true, Hermes? Nothing that is generated is subject to change, that is true, but as these bodies were created by the first Father, it is possible that the matter of which they are composed is true. These bodies have no truth due to their changes, for there is truth only in that which remains identical to itself. But, Father, what then should we call truth? Hermes, only the sun can be said to be true, for while everything else changes, the sun does not change and remains identical to itself. Thus, it alone is responsible for giving shape to everything in the world, for governing everything, and for generating everything. It is to him that I pay homage, the truth of his being after the one and the first. I recognize him as the demiurge, the builder of the world. And who is the first truth, Father Hermes, the Kutad, who is not made of matter, who is not in a body, who has neither color nor form, who does not change, who is not changed, who always is? On the other hand, everything that is not true is perishable. The providence of truth maintains the decomposition of everything on earth, contains it there, and will do so eternally, for without decay, there is no generation. Each generation is followed by decomposition, so that new creatures may be born. Everything that is born must necessarily be born from what decomposes, and what is born must necessarily decompose so that the generation of creatures knows no end. Recognize this as the first and active cause of the generation of beings. That is why those born from decomposition can only be false, for they are born once of one type and another time of a different type. It is impossible for them to be reborn exactly the same. How then can what does not rebirth identical be true? It must therefore be called appearance to correctly designate this phenomenon. Man, the appearance of a man; the child, the appearance of a child; the young man, the appearance of a young man; the adult, the appearance of an adult; the old man, the appearance of an old man. For a man is not a true man, a child is not a true child, an adult is not a true adult, an old man is not a true old man, for things change and lie as much in the past as in the present. However, my son, understand well that even the false phenomena of this world depend on the truth from above, and as it is so, I declare that appearance is the work of truth.